Based on previous readings, we know a person's native language will heavily influence the development of their second language based on several key aspects. One key aspect is how well they know their L1. Their fluency in their L1 directly affects their fluency in their L2. If they have trouble speaking in their L1, they will have even more difficulty speaking in their L2. A house with a weak foundation is bound to collapse. Another key aspect to consider is the similarity between the L1 and L2. Depending on the similarity of the L1 and L2, students may have a significantly easier or harder time learning the L2. For example, native English speakers will have an easier time learning German compared to learning Japanese. This is because English and German have nearly identical alphabets and similar grammar structure. Japanese, on the other hand, has 3 different alphabets and an almost opposite like grammar structure. This affects the L2's oral language development because students might speak using their L1's grammar structure, resulting in speaking out of order. A third key aspect to consider is the culture surrounding the L1. While it may not seem like it makes a difference in something like language, it does. For example, in America, whenever someone sneezes, you say bless you or gesundheit. It may be considered rude to not say something after someone sneezes. This is common sense among Americans, and everyone acknowledges this gesture. However, this idea of saying something after someone sneezes in Japan does not exist. No one says anything after someone sneezes, and no one is offended. So, things that may seem like common sense or straightforward to say in a student's L1 culture may not be so in their L2 culture, and vice versa. The last key aspect to consider is the L1's pronunciation. Your L1 and L2 will dictate how difficult it is for you to hear the difference between words as well as pronounce them. For example, the word volleyball is spelled the same both in English and German, and only slightly pronounced differently in German. It's pronounced something like Volleyball. So, if these were your first 2 languages, it would be easier to pronounce and identify words for the most part. However, the English word first would be phonetically spelled as fasto and pronounced fasto in Japanese, Fassuto. This would be difficult because the English word fast would be spelled phonetically the exact same way and pronounced the exact same way. So, a Japanese L2 student would have difficulty hearing the difference between the word first and fast because in Japanese they would hear it as fasto for both situations. Some essential aspects to consider for development of oral communication are the opportunities for all students, the types of oral activities, recognizing comprehensible input, and teaching applicable oral communication. It is essential to provide opportunities to each student for speaking opportunities, not picking favorites. This will help ensure the class is progressing at relatively similar rates. The type of oral activity should be considered because it can affect a student's engagement level. We know the more engaged students are, the more likely they are to learn and stay focused. Another essential aspect is recognizing comprehensible input within students. We do this to ensure there is active learning occurring, not just mere imitation. The last aspect to consider is how functional the oral communication we are teaching is. We should be teaching students practical conversation skills, not just what the textbook tells us to go over.